Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We're looking at a pretty big Monday night slate here tonight. In this one, taking a look at the Raptors sizzling hot, taking on those Pelicans. We're looking to fit CJ McCollum into their rotation as best they can. Seems like they've had a bit of struggles getting him and BI together, but we'll take a look at some of the best bets and a few player props in here. Nate does have his great article up as well on playpicks.com with some best bets and player props in there for you. And make sure to like and subscribe to that page, as we got a couple other videos up for you today, including that player props video. We'll look to stay sizzling hot with you guys on. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, the Raptors are down to -3.5 now at NOLA. It was -4.5 at the time of our research, and like that even more. Definitely liking Toronto on the road here. The total is 222.5 at the moment. As you mentioned, 8 other games on the slate tonight. Pistons are +4 at the Wizards. The Thunder +8 at Knicks. Kings are -2.5 at the Nets, who will not have Ben Simmons yet. Obviously, no Kyrie or Kevin Durant either. The Blazers are +15 at the Bucks. The Spurs down to +3.5 at Bulls. They were about 5.5. That total hovering around 235. The Rockets are +14 at Utah. Magic +11 at Denver. And the other game we break down, Golden State -6 at the Clippers. That total dropped a little bit to 220 right now. We would take the over and would consider a tease there with the Warriors to score a few more points. But we are talking here about the Raptors and the Pelicans, and I'll start with the Pelicans. As you mentioned, yeah, it's a bit of an awkward fit. At least there's going to be some growing pains with CJ and Brandon Ingram, two of the guys who score one of the highest percentage of points off unassisted field goals, just kind of a your turn, my turn, dribble, produce your own shot. And as a Celtics fan, I can certainly attest that having two guys who do that, it doesn't necessarily translate to wins. It's hard to figure out how they incorporate each other. So in CJ's first 2 games here, obviously the Pelicans have lost both. Their defensive rating has jumped to 123. Very poor defensively. Devontae in their last game, CJ did what he could, getting his own offense, 36 points against the Spurs, 15 for 24 field goal shooting, but they still lost by 10 because Ingram had 22 points on 9 for 19, and Devontae Graham went straight up scoreless. Ingram is now sporting a 94 offensive rating in those 2 games with CJ, where he was closer to 116, 120. He was on quite a heater before CJ arrived. And the loss of Josh Hart, while nobody's going to say he's a better player than CJ McCollum, it's just a completely different type of identity for this team. Without Hart, their defensive rating went up to 115 this year. They went 6-9, really mostly because the schedule happened to be soft when they didn't have Hart at times. But he just completely changed the culture, especially when it came to winning home games. They were on a streak, I believe, where they had won 7 of 9 home games, and they were hard to bet against at home. In their last 5 home games, 1-4, -6.3 net rating. Only one of those games has gone over because they can't score really. And I'm looking at the ways they struggle to score. Again, assist to turnover ratio, struggling in 3-point shooting. They're 25th on the season at home, but 28th over their last 3. And that's really one of the only areas Toronto is struggling, is giving up threes. Toronto also plays a little bit undersized at times, but the Pelicans have dropped to a league average rebounding rate after being, near the top of the league with Josh Hart because of what, his individual efforts and what he brings to that team. And then, of course, yeah, you look at Toronto. Look, they've just been fantastic on both ends of the floor in their last 9 here, 1-8 until they lost a 1-point game in Denver recently. They had covered in all 8 of those wins. They're 8th in both offensive and defensive rating, 5th in net rating, scoring 119, first in 3-point percentage. And in their last 6 road games, they had won 5 of those before going to Denver. Even better, the second best net rating in basketball over that 6-game road, and just lighting it up from 3. Another area New Orleans struggles, the 7th worst 3-point defense on the league when they're at home. It just seems like it's a bit more of a mismatch than we're getting here. This is the number 1 offense over the last 3 games in the Raptors and the number 20 offense in the Pelicans. That to me spells bigger difference than 3.5 points. Granted, Toronto might struggle to contain old friend Jonas Valanciunas down low if they don't have a true center to stop him, but they're going to play him off the floor on the other end. I mean, who's he guarding if they go with Siakam and Barnes at the 4-5, right? I mean, Toronto should light it up here, and they should keep rolling on the road.
Yeah, no, I feel great about that. I think, everything that Toronto does well so far. I mean, they're really just scoring. As you mentioned, they're actually not getting very many assisted field goals, which is odd when you have a small ball lineup and you keep the ball moving the way that they do. Been loving Scotty Barnes at the 5, Pascal at the 4 together. Not really incurring too many troubles down low in terms of giving up points in the paint or even really scoring. They are scoring a lot of their points from 3, and really also just really turning defense into offense. You mentioned their defensive ratings, just going in terms of the rating going down, but moving up in terms of how good they are compared to the rest of the league on defense right now. They've definitely picked it up, as you mentioned, up to in the top 10 in defensive rating over their last 9 during that streak. It took a Nikola Jokic incredible play on defense at the very end of the game the other day for the Raptors to lose to the Nuggets in their first loss in their last 10 games or so. So I think what they're doing and who they're doing it against, and then is impressive. The way that they're doing it, as we mentioned, the way that they're scoring as well is impressive, just because of the defense turning into offense. In terms of top 5 in fast break points over that time frame, as well as points off of turnovers, and still not playing at a very fast pace, yet scoring all those points. As you mentioned, they've been incredibly efficient. Gary Trent is a huge reason for that. Our guy, he had 17 points in the first quarter the other day, and continues his hot streak over the last 15 games or so, climbing his way above 20 points a game in that time frame. So adding another 20-point scorer, Fred VanVleet obviously that's cut into his production a bit, but it's actually ended. When Fred VanVleet was scoring 34 a game over an 8-game stretch previous to their win streak, they were only 4-4 in that time, and then they go off after he starts to limit his usage rate goes down a bit, but that just incorporates Gary Trent better into the offense, and now you've got more shooters and more guys that the other team needs to worry about. So as far as the Pellies go, I need to see a lot more to trust them. You mentioned you don't know if CJ, you don't want to say Josh Hart is better than CJ McCollum, but it's a little bit deeper of a question than just better. It's where is he better and how is he better? And those rebounds and that defense was huge for them from Josh Hart. He's a stat filler. I mean, his first game with Portland, he had 23 points on 3 of 6 from 3, only 1 board before assist. So he's just a guy that does a lot more for your team in different areas than CJ, which is why it would seem like it was going to be so hard to unload McCollum for the Pellies, is because of the fact that huge contract comes with a guy who's very undersized, can't play defense, and is really, it brings you, I mean, look, what's the difference between Jordan Poole and CJ McCollum, but maybe a few years in the league at this point, right? And so these guys, while they're very, very good scorers, and they're small, they're not as good at defense, and there's a good amount of those types of players in the league. A rebounding guard like Josh Hart, which has already affected their defense, as we mentioned, both in the paint and on the wing, as well as their rebounding numbers in the last 3 games without him. That's huge, and that's going to be something where you take the Raptors right now, who don't have any holes. They're similar to the Mavs and how they're playing as well, other than not necessarily stylistically, as the offense just revolves around Luka, but they're doing it with efficiency. They're turning defense into offense, and they're playing at a pace that doesn't require them, to really do more than just hit a couple of those threes, as that's predominantly where they're shooting from, and then just play that great defense and get out in transition with small ball guys like Scotty Barnes, who can get a rebound and just immediately turn and go with it and dribble up the court. There's 5 guys on the court doing that for the Raptors right now, and really none for the Pellies in terms of that ability to be that type of transition team either.
Mm-hmm. Let me give you an opportunity to walk that back a little bit, though. CJ McCollum, who scored 40-plus points to lead his team to the Western Conference Finals, maybe a little bit of a difference from Jordan Poole at this stage in their career. Not saying Poole can't become a great player.
Right.
That we're not trying to disrespect CJ McCollum here in any way, shape, or form, though. It's just about how fits work. And that's why GMs are reluctant usually to make these type of moves right at the deadline when their team is trending in a certain way. So now the Pelicans season might kind of take a bit of a backslide here as they try to adjust on the fly. It's also, you mentioned the Raptors, no holes, really, really tough to beat on the wing. And I looked at both McCollum and Ingram's career stats against the Raptors, who have always been great on the wing defensively. They both average an even 18.8 points per game, coincidentally. And that's not great for two guys that are scoring a huge percentage of their team's points right now. Yeah. It's really going to be about Valanciunas trying to slow this game down and burn his former team down low. But Toronto not giving up a ton of paint points either, despite being undersized. We've seen this at all levels of basketball. Even if you're a little bit undersized, like Scotty Barnes might be smaller, but you're not moving him. And unless Valanciunas has the soundboard shuffle to his repertoire, he's not necessarily going to burn him every time. But yeah, really with the Raptors, they've just been rolling against the spread, now up to 16-9 and 1 against the spread on the road, 5-1 when road favorites. That's something you can bank on. 14-8 after their loss. So I would take them to cover. Yeah, no problem at all with that. If it's going to fluctuate around -4 and you want to use it as a pick'em with another game, tease the Warriors down to -2.5, I would suggest. I'm not messing with the total in this game either because the Raptors have kind of oscillated, even though they've been going over lately. I don't trust this Pelicans offense, and I think the Raptors will win the game. And I'm not really sure if it'll be a high scoring or low scoring, but I just think that they're a better team and that they match up very well against this kind of wing heavy offense.
Yeah, I concur. I think the interesting point too you brought up is Valanciunas playing against his old team. I mean, he's got decent numbers against them since he left the Raptors. 16 points a game, 17 boards a game in 4 versus the Raptors. I mean, the Pellies are the 4th best rebounding team in the league for a reason. Valanciunas, I think he's about 4th in rebounding in the league at this point. I do think you can consider that as like a simple maybe rebounds prop for him at 11.5. I told you he's averaging 17 against this team. They've been pretty much the same team down low since he left, probably only gotten smaller, right? Since guys like Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka have left the squad. Now you're talking about, right, Scotty Barnes and Pascal. Yes, I agree. They're both very good rebounders, and Scotty Barnes is a very strong 6'9" young man. But Jonas Valanciunas is a, almost 300-pound fully grown man that will probably be getting a ton of rebounds. 11 boards for him is even money right now. I feel very good about that, especially with the amount of field goal attempts that the Raptors are getting up. Not necessarily in the top 10 in terms of field goal attempts, but we told you that they still are getting a good amount of possessions so far in their last 9 or so. So I think you can bank on some boards for him, but still like the Raptors to be able to pull this one out, and keeping that spread at 3.5 feels too low right now for a Pelicans team that you mentioned a couple of times so far. We don't necessarily know what we're getting on offense in terms of the fit right now. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Check out those other couple videos we have for you, including that player props one. And until we see you next, happy betting.